Area Babes, Ashawo Superstars is a series of meme-style collages using appropriated imagery of female characters from Nollywood movies. The artist Aroma Aliwa states to the series' home and Instagram page that the piece is a rated R performance piece project. The page, which started in 2019, is primarily made up of early 2000s Nollywood screenshots and very recently has been accompanied with performance videos that star Aroma herself. Aroma pulls her screenshots from Nollywood or Nigerian Hollywood films, which sort of exploded globally in the early 2000s. In these films, there is often a female character who is considered promiscuous or hypersexual, making her the site of lots of gossip. She may be seen using her sexual prowess to get money or other favors from men, and might be called an Ashawo, which is Nigerian slang for whore or prostitute. To briefly return to the Instagram's bio, it is relevant to note that the page is declared premium content for folks 18 and over, which also puts this work in conversation with the sort of social media virtual sex work that is currently becoming a big trend due to sites like OnlyFans and the fact that Instagram users, primarily young women, will have folks pay to access their premium content, usually meaning sexually explicit pics or videos. While there are no sexually explicit content on the page, the various characters in Area Babes Ashawo Superstars discuss how to use sex and sexuality in a similar gender-based power dynamic. In Andrew Ali Ibi's stereotype representation of women in Nigerian films, he creates this visual conceptual framework for understanding various female tropes in Nollywood movies. This diagram portrays what Ibi considers four realms in which women exist in Nollywood films: the femme fatale, the mistress/prostitute, the gold digger/trophy wife, and the housewife. Each character in Area Babes Ashawo Superstars has a consistent storyline that essentially positions them as various antitheses to the housewife, who Ibi describes as the favorite stereotype because she falls in line with the patriarchal nature of society. Aroma portrays the advanced Ashawos as expert femme fatales who encourage gold digging to emerging area babes who may appear to be mistresses or sex workers. They are all similarly focused on how to extract money and gifts from men, while flaunting their lavish lifestyle and criticizing the patriarchal norms imposed on women who do not behave within the rules of patriarchy. Another interesting layer of Area Babes Ashawo Superstars is the element of gossip. The older Ashawos are sometimes portrayed as Aroma's haters who send their house girl to essentially keep tabs on Aroma and both her personal and professional life by stalking Aroma's personal Instagram page. In Nigeria, it is common to employ young women to do various tasks around the home, but there is often a power imbalance that may force these women to do other odd personal tasks for the folks who employ them. I'll focus more on this character's role later, not only because I really like her position in the series, but also because she adds an interesting layer of simulacra and body politics to the overall work. The house girl is essentially asked to stalk Aroma so that other women may criticize her physical appearance and artistic choices. But in turn, the house girl is often exposing their hypocrisy and desire to be more like Aroma, who essentially positions herself as the ultimate area babe and Ashawo superstar. To dive deeper into this project and put it in conversation with other contemporary work, I want to discuss Area Babes Ashawo Superstars at the intersections of appropriation, simulacra, and the body and performance art. When discussing appropriation, I would like to first look at memes through the feminist cultural studies tradition of text reader analysis, using the work of Rennie Riot, before moving on to simulacra, specifically the virtual signification of identity, using AI Instagram personality Lil Michaela, and finally I'll chat about exhibitionism and excess in relation to the body and performance art through Anne Hirsch's performance A Basement Affair. In discussing the role of appropriation in Area Babes Ashawo Superstars, I looked to Akane Kanai's article, Sociality and Classification, Reading Gender, Race, and Class in a Humorous Meme. Kanai suggests memes require a social rather than individual set of competencies and knowledge, forcing the reader to operationalize gender, class, and race readership practices. Kanai states that the reader gets the joke by aligning the appropriated imagery and caption, remixing and matching classifications of people, bodies, and objects. Using this theory, we can understand that memes privilege an ideal reader. While there is often a perceived universality of meme culture and social media comedy in general, it seems to be more the case that memes assume that all their viewers employ a certain hegemonic idea. We see that in Rennie Riot's digital collages, which reimagine 1970s advertisements and album covers. In order to find humor in a meme, you must identify with the idiosyncrasies of the identity the meme is asking you to embody. While Area Babes, Ashawo Superstars asks its readers to embody the language and knowledge system of a cosmopolitan, transnational, sexually liberated Instagram baddie, Rennie Riot's work requests its readers to understand the idiosyncrasies of the descendants of 1970s Black pop culture and the contemporary feminist social media satire. For example, in this collage, Rennie Riot appropriates imagery of the cast of the 90s sitcom Living Single, reimagined as a musical group called Umoja, with an album entitled Happy Kwanzaa. To be able to understand this collage, the reader is asked to employ gendered and race-based readership practices, in which they understand not only the kinship of the characters on Living Single, which was primarily marketed to young Black women, but also the relevance of the principle of Umoja, which focuses on community and togetherness during the Black American tradition of Kwanzaa. In both Aroma and Rennie Riot's work, we see a clear connection between the use of appropriated imagery and the reader's ability to participate in the meme. I find this interesting because these artists' interventions allow their work to create a clear virtual and group understanding that somewhat mimics the experiences that are attached to their IRL identities. As we shift into Simulacra, I am interested in the ways in which Area Babes and Ashawo Superstars uses social media to look at the ways in which we re-embody ourselves on the internet. In Virtual Skin, Articulating Race in Cyberspace, Cameron Bailey, in an effort to find virtual signification of identity, asks, where do I look for my digitalia? Even though cyberspace is supposed to disembody our real-life bodies and identities, where and how do we announce the experiences of our real-life bodies in a virtual world if we so desire? In Area Babes, Aroma's text intervention, along with the Nollywood imagery she appropriates, allows her to perform a virtual identity that folks with certain bodies can relate themselves, creating a simulated community that mimics signifiers from our non-virtual reality. Another interesting example of this virtual performance of identity is this project called Lil Michaela, or Michaela Sousa, who is a CGI Instagram personality. When her profile initially premiered, she was presented as an independent, intelligent being who had her own thoughts, identity, etc., until the Instagram page was hacked by a right-wing CGI character who threatened to expose Michaela if she did not tell the truth. And that truth was that she was not an intelligent being, but a concocted personality by this team of artists and storytellers. The thing I think is most interesting about her is that she describes herself as a bisexual, Latinx, immigrant woman of color. But again, this is just her creator speaking. She embodies this virtual identity that cannot correspond with any real-life experiences.
It's like Palo Santo and Angel Sweat. And I swear to God, she's like, I me. Quick update, the tripod and I got into another fight. We're definitely breaking up. It's Bot Girl Summer. What's up, Michaelians? You know what time it is. Michaela shares random information about her life that nobody cares about time, except...
The problem with Lil Michaela, beyond the performance of this woke girl trope, is the perceived endurance of her identity. In Colleen Kim Donahue's The Pose as Interventionist Gesture, she asserts that there is a presumed futurity of the racially ambiguous mixed-race woman. As we so closely associate the future with robots and AI technology, what does it mean for these robots and AI to have light skin, racially liminal features, and straight hair? Lil Michaela is a part of an emerging group of AI Instagram personalities that essentially all match this profile. Are we being told by these AI creators that folks who do not look like this will have no place in the future? Seemingly, Lil Michaela's creators use her virtual identity to re-embody their own personal projections of what they hope the future to be. But in doing so many other folks seem to be denied virtuality. Finally, I will use Baudrillard's Order of Simulacra to break down not only the role of simulacra in the work, but also the elements of body and performance in Area Babes and Ashawo Superstars. In the first order, where representation is clearly an artificial placemaker for the real, is the actress who is clearly playing a character in a Nollywood film. In the second order, where distinction between representation and reality begin to blur because of mass reproduction, that would be the screenshot of the image outside of the context of the film and Aroma's artist intervention through text. In the third order, where simulacrum precedes the original and distinction between reality and representation vanish. This exists within the characters from Area Babe, simulating a situation in which folks are actively gossiping about Aroma. To understand the role of gossiping in Area Babes, it's useful to have a bit of biographical information about Aroma. She initially became a popular performance artist within the realm of the blogging site Tumblr during the early 2010s. She often collaborated with Solange until they had some sort of falling out, which Aroma often addressed publicly. She faced a lot of backlash for this, people feeling that she should have addressed the situation in a more amicable and private manner. Ultimately, she became widely understood as temperamental, erratic, and generally unlikable. In this blog post about Aroma about the falling out, a user states, "She's kind of mentally unbalanced and she gets on my nerves. Plus, she gives herself way too much credit with the claim that she created this contemporary, popular African aesthetic." It's interesting to think about the notion of Aroma being considered so unlikable in context to this work. When a woman, especially a black woman, is considered unlikable, her lack of palatability does not stop at just her personality, but also extends to her aesthetic. In many ways, stereotypes around black women's personalities and aesthetics can be understood as them having excessive bodies, being too much of this, being too much of that. So it is fitting that Aroma would choose this sort of exhibitionist simulacra in this work, in which people are sending their house girl to stalk her Instagram page so that they may discuss her excessiveness. Another interesting example of this sort of exhibitionism is used in Anne Hirsch's A Basement Affair. So Anne, in the middle of getting her MFA from Syracuse University, took a year off to go on this reality show called A Basement Affair, which is a spinoff of I Love New York, which is a spinoff from the reality show A Flavor of Love. In order to get on the show, Anne pretends to be the sort of quirky airhead girl, as she calls herself, in her audition tape, and she actually ends up getting on the show. When she arrives, she feels like the other girls were using their bodies to perform this sort of sexy personality. So she decides to drop the entire act when she's arrived so she can perform a more real body. Anne in this way uses her own body to critique what she considers to be the excessive woman of the reality TV generation. While I think in many ways this is problematic, I feel like it's an interesting connection back to Aroma's work and using their own bodies to critique the excessiveness or exhibitionism of the female body. When discussing Area Babes, Ashawo superstars at the intersections of simulacra, appropriation, and the body and performance, it is interesting to consider all the ways in which we choose to perform online. I find it so interesting that this work takes place on social media because the gallery and the museum are spaces that can forcibly disembody some folks, but on the internet you choose the ways in which you are or are not embodied, and Aroma Aliwa takes full control of this notion. I ask folks to consider, how do we perform our identity in cyberspace? And what is the everyday role of performance in simulacra and social media and internet culture? What are we performing and simulating when we post and why? Thank you all.